Welcome back, everybody. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today I was sitting at work and I get emailed the newest Nature table of contents. So for those of you that don't know, what you could do is you could subscribe to different journals, scientific journals, and when they have a new table of contents, they'll email them to you and you could browse through and see if there's any articles worth reading to you. So one of the journals that I, look for is Nature. And the title of the article was Industry Scientists More Positive Than Those in Academia. And that really caught my attention. So I wanted to take a look at what's going on. So every year or a couple years, Nature goes and they survey scientists within industry and academia. And they look for things like job satisfaction and salary and makeup in terms of gender and nationality, and they try to get like a comprehensive view as to what the scientific landscape looks like for professionals. And somebody was commenting on the findings in terms of what, who's happier, those in academia or those in industry. And so I'm going to leave a link to this journal article in the description below if you're interested to read the whole thing. But I wanted to read a couple of parts that I, came across and I found really interesting and kind of give my reaction to those. So the first one is, it says, scientists who work in industry are more satisfied and better paid than our colleagues in academia, according to the self-selected group of respondents, which comprised of more than 3,000 working scientists. Okay, so I think that there's two parts to this. One is that there's better pay in industry, which I think most of us know. And then the second part is that of the people that responded, there are more people happy in their position in industry than there are in academia. Now, unfortunately, one thing that's missing from this article and one thing that really needs to be dissected apart is, why are people more happy? Is it just monetary, or is it things like grants? So for example, a lot of PIs feel really burnt out writing grants. That's the reality, is that nowadays you need to be well funded to be able to run your lab, and it really, it can burn out PIs. So what is it that is making people feel happier within industry versus academia? That's something that's not really discussed here. But I do find it really fascinating, especially because if you continue on in this article, what they talk about is that job satisfaction used to be pretty much on par with each other. And I've seen that in other situations before where they were pretty much on par with each other. But recently there's been this big decrease in terms of job satisfaction amongst those in academia, whereas in industry it stayed the same or maybe even gone up a little bit. So why is there this discrepancy? Well, my personal feeling, again, this is just my personal feeling, that's purely anecdotal, no real scientific evidence to back this up, is that I think it has to do with hours worked, it has to do with flexibility, and it has to do with burnout. So compensation, so you're just compensated better when you work in industry versus academia. In terms of flexibility, what I mean by that is that you do have more probably flexibility when you work in academia in terms of like what you're actually going to get to work on. You get to pick which projects your lab is going to drive forward, versus an industry, there's a board of directors and a management team that's kind of coming up with the direction of the company. But what I mean by flexibility is the ability to pivot and to move into new areas that you maybe wouldn't be able to normally. So in terms of being a PI, you're going to be just, maybe doing some teaching and then running your lab. And it's the same thing, every day. Whereas in industry, you really get that ability to pivot and learn new things, pick up new skills. You really continue growing as a scientist, where I feel you don't quite get the same growth opportunity in industry. And then in terms of burnout, I think that in industry, you do have to work many hours, but I think work-life balance tends to be a lot better than it is in academia, where people are just nonstop, 24 hours a day racing against each other working. And while people do work good hours in industry, meaning a lot of hours, It's not nearly as bad as it is in academia. In academia, it can be out of control how many hours people are working a week. So the next thing I wanted to read, which I thought was really interesting, and this is something that there's definitely more of focus, I think, in industry than in academia on DE&I, which, if you're not familiar, is the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and trying to make sure that everybody feels welcome. Not that it isn't there in academia. I just think they do a better job in industry on covering this. And I think this translates a little bit to the next point, which is another key finding covered in this week's piece on workplace diversity is that 30% of respondents in academia reported workplace discrimination, harassment, or bullying, compared with 15% in industry. That is, the number should be zero. There shouldn't be any kind of bullying or harassment. I mean, it should be zero. But there's actually twice as many people in academia that feel like they've been bullied or harassed than there are in industry. And I think a lot of that just has to do with, the relationship between mentor and student, and in a work environment, it's a little bit different, So if I'm at work, it's more of a team environment versus in academia where it's me as a postdoc and my PI, or the PI who just kind of autocratically runs the lab, or that PI and then the department head. I have a whole HR department I could talk to. It's a different professional setting. Whereas I think in academia, we're kind of trained to just take whatever anyone says at us. And I know that a lot of postdocs feel like they are completely bullied and harassed by their PI. A lot of grad students feel the same way, and they think that they kind of have to take it just so that they could get through. And it's not really acceptable, but I think it's interesting that the numbers show that there's just more people in academia that feel like they're getting bullied than those that are in industry. The next part I wanted to talk about had to do with compensation. And actually, we'll just tie these last two together. Basically, this first part, it talks about it's a supply and demand, right? Laws of supply and demand. So in industry, there's just a flood of positions. There's more positions out there than can be filled. And so to attract talent, there's this constant battle of trying to one-up each other, okay? So you guys pay this amount, then we'll pay a little bit more. Okay, so your bonus is this every year, then we'll give a little bit higher of a bonus. This is what your stock equity is, we'll give more. You guys give free food once a week, we'll give you free food 2 or 3 times a week. You guys get to work from home once a week, we'll have you work at home twice a week. There's all of these things, not just in terms of compensation with a monetary value, but also in terms of just like perks, like again, like how many days a week you could work at home. All the companies are always trying to one-up each other. And in academia, it's the opposite. There are so few positions available and so many postdoc positions available, so few faculty positions available, that really they don't have to cater to you at all, because there's always somebody willing to take the job for less money than you are. And so because of this, there's this huge difference in compensation. Now, this doesn't always have to be a bad thing. So for example, at the very end here of the article, they say, of course, many do find a career in academia highly or hugely rewarding. One academic bioinformatician in the United States who responded to the survey reported earning about 50% what she was offered in industry. Okay, so she works in bioinformatics in academia. She earns about half as what she would have earned if she went to industry. It would be nice if academia could be more competitive with industry, but I love what I do and where I am, so I can't complain. But as competition for scientific talent increases, academic leaders must not assume that sentiment will prevail, meaning this individual maybe is okay. But as compensation in industry continues to increase, if academia doesn't keep up, they're going to fall behind, okay? If they want current and future generations of academics to thrive, they need to learn how other sectors succeed in recruiting, retaining talent, rewarding staff, and consider how to ensure they're still attractive to top talent. Okay, this is the ultimate key to the article. There can be differences in satisfaction between academia and industry, and there can be differences in terms of compensation, satisfaction. You know, they're not going to be on par. They're two different worlds, and that's fine. The issue becomes, how can academics retain top talent? Because it used to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago that when you did a PhD, you did it because you wanted to be a PI. And if you went into industry, it was because it was a lesser career. And because of that, what industry used to do was pitch a bit of a higher salary. Okay, you know, people don't necessarily want to come to industry, so what we'll do is we'll pay better so we could try to attract talent. But nowadays, the view is different. And you have a lot of postdocs that are like myself that are going in thinking maybe that they want to work in academia, but then they look across the aisle at industry and they say, so you get paid way more money than I would ever get in academia. And you get a yearly bonus and stock options. And you guys get free food. And you guys get to work home some days and aren't required to always be there. And on and on and on. And you start kind of lining up all the different things that you get in terms of perks and compensation and working in industry. And you look at then what the job is in academia, and it's like, okay, well, are there perks of the job? Well, yeah, I want to be a professor. But then what else? You kind of slave away doing the grant writing. That's not so fun. You have to be on, panels for judging grants and do peer review for papers. And, you start looking at it and it starts feeling like, I don't know, like I feel like I'm getting a better deal over there in industry. And if academia wants to be able to keep up and they want to be able to really retain that top talent, they need to find a more competitive way of doing so, because what's happening is they're falling too far behind what's actually happening in industry. So I'm not saying all this because I personally think, working in academia is not the right track. In fact, several of the videos we put out on this channel are dealing with how you can, try to transition to becoming a faculty member. And I have a lot of friends that are faculty members. And I think that it's a really good opportunity if you can do it. But I do think that there is some truth to this article and these findings, and the findings seem to be real. They were an actual survey, and that the satisfaction in terms of how happy you are at work seems to be higher in industry. And a lot of it has to do with job satisfaction going down in academia. And so the question is, and what I'm interested to hear from you guys in the chat is, how can we boost job satisfaction within academia? Because, even for industry to succeed, it relies on academia moving the field forward, right? A lot of what happens in industry is building off of that academic field. And a lot of the most important findings come in academia. And so we need a way to have both industry and academia. So how could we really make academia more appealing before it kind of starts falling too far behind? So just a cool thought exercise. So with that, I'm going to close this one up. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. We could do more of these kinds of reaction videos. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.